through one of the side windows, they shot a tear gas bullet in there, and this thing set the house on fire. And I mean, the curtains were flaming up, and
Jesus
anyway,
Christ.
I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, boy, this is getting worse and worse,
God, no!
Welcome to Achieving Failure, a podcast that gives you a break from politics, popular trends, and brings you good old-fashioned life stories that made us who we are today. Sit back and relax with your host, Chris, as he brings you another exciting adventure on how to achieve failure.
When Joey was a kid and his grandparents lived outside of Phoenix and Chandler, they lived on a golf course, and the 18th hole was just across the street. Well, those little Sony cameras had come out.
Yeah.
Well, Joey and I went out there on the front lawn, and these old ladies that are playing golf, they weren't old. I guess they were, 50 or something.
Nah, in 60s.
Yeah, anyway, they're a bunch of women, and there's a foursome, and they're putting at the hole, and they're every time they bend over, we're filming it. I'd make fart noises, and oh, that was a ripper, Mel, her sister, and on and on and on. And we thought it was hilarious, and we took it in the house and started showing it to his mom and his grandparents. And they got fucking madder than hell, and his mom pulled the tape out of it, and I wanted to keep it, didn't you?
I think we still have it.
Do we?
Yeah, it's somewhere.
God.
So today we have my dad on the show because my stories are long-winded and boring, and his are funny and action-packed most of the time. So my dad is a Vietnam War era veteran, retired police department, and he was also a full-time midget race car driver.
When you say midget race car driver, what's a midget race car driver?
So midgets are
Like you're not driving a midget around. You're not hopping on his. You're not
No,
hopping
no,
on
no.
a-
Racing short people.
No.
Okay, you're not hopping on a jockey's back and slapping his ass kind of thing.
They couldn't.
Okay.
Those little guys couldn't carry me. I don't think.
So basically a midget is an open wheel race car. It's what most NASCAR drivers and Indy drivers get their start in. Back when you started them, they were around 400 horsepower in a 1,200 pound car.
Yeah, it was 1,200. It was 1,200 pounds with fuel in the driver, and you're making, upwards of 400 horsepower. So they're a rocket ship,
Running on alcohol.
pure alcohol.
Yeah. So I grew up listening to these stories, looking at old photos of all this stuff that he would tell me about, and it kind of stuck with me, and that's kind of why I became what I am today, a gearhead and aircraft mechanic and support veterans and law enforcement and whatnot. But I always wanted a way to have his stories, forever. And some of the stuff that I would tell people, they would never believe me if, there wasn't proof or if he didn't say it himself.
Well,
So
Granddad, he was with me the whole time we were racing.
yeah,
So
I mean, absolutely
My dad.
horrible stories about shit that he did to his dad, and when they were out there racing. But we'll start with as far back as I can go. Aside from you telling me when you were a kid, when you got drafted into the military in 1968.
69.
69.
Yeah, that it was kind of boring. And we used to take the 45 automatics, which was your sidearm, and our semi-automatic, and they were the old Colts. I mean, the barrels used to rattle in the gun, but we'd crop it and put a pencil with the eraser towards the hammer, and we drew a target on the wall, and we'd shoot the pencils, sharpen them up real sharp, and we'd shoot the pencil at the target, and damned if they didn't stick in the wall. I mean, that's how hard that thing pitched them out. But yeah, we did that all the time.
And I remember you telling me a story about a Army Jeep.
Oh, well, we had on the patrol Jeeps they weren't Jeeps. I think they were made by Ford Motor Company. They were, I'm really not sure who made them, but they didn't look like a Willys or anything like that or a CJ, but they were Jeeps nonetheless, 4-wheel drive. And anyway, we were out jacking around, a bunch of us, and a couple of us went out into the area where they do the training with tanks and artillery, and they bivouac out in the field and teach. It was a training area. We had a Jeep, me and another guy, and there was another 2 guys that were in another Jeep, and we were racing around, and it was just as dark as can be out there. I mean, and we didn't realize that over the hill there was a whole company of artillery guys spending the night out there, and we're racing around those Jeeps, and we're firing our weapons in the air and having a good time, And anyway, we rolled the Jeep, one of them, and wadded it up in a ball. I mean, it was messed up. It wouldn't run. So anyway, the other guy, we hooked a rope to the Jeep, and the other guy was towing us out of there. And up over the hill comes another Jeep, and it's one of the officers from the artillery guys. You guys firing your weapons out here? We got men over the hill. And, no, we're not firing our weapons, God, no. Matter of fact, our Jeep broke down. He looks at that Jeep and he says, yeah, it looks broke down to me. So finally he left. We thought we were in trouble there, but we towed that Jeep into the motor pool when the guy that was checking them in wasn't looking. We towed it in, put it in the line, and then we signed them out, and we got the hell out of there. So the next day, I guess they went out there, and this Jeep's all wadded up. I mean, I don't even know how it rolled, being towed. Yeah. I mean, the suspension was all bent on it. It was a lot of fun. That was one of the fun episodes. But anyway, that basically. We're just like, we're 19-year-old kids. We're screwing around out there, having a good time.
Yeah. So after the Army, you go in as a cadet?
I went right into the police academy, yeah.
Okay. I'll start with one of the stories that I remember the most, because I thought my dad's got to be the luckiest man alive. I've always been interested in firearms and how they work. And back in those days, it was common for someone to own a revolver, whereas today it's not so common.
Yeah, we had to carry revolvers in those days. So
if you know anything about firearms, it's very rare that a firearm or a revolver misfires or malfunctions in any way, shape, or form. I remember the story you told me about a noise complaint call or something that you went to.
Yeah, it was a simple call. It was late spring. Of course, we were in short sleeve shirts. In the winter, you had to wear long sleeve shirts with a tie, and in the spring, you didn't have to wear a tie, and it was short sleeve shirts. But I remember it was nice out, and the sun was still up, and so it was like early evening, and we got a complaint on somebody racing up and down the street on a motorcycle, and as people called in, well, we stopped at their house, and they said that, the guy that lives down in that house pointed to a house. Mm-hmm. So we said, well, we'll go talk to him. And they said, well, you don't have to be, they were older people. They said, you don't have to be ugly with him, but just tell him that, you need to stop doing that. And so we said, okay, we'll take care of it. So my partner and I, we go down there and walk up to the front porch, and we're looking around and don't see a motorcycle, and, the garage is shut, and we don't see anybody moving around. So knock on the door, and my partner, he's just kind of wandering around because it's basically a nothing call, and he's walking towards the edge of the porch, and I'm facing right at the front door. Well, the door opens, then there was a screen door, and this guy answers the door, and he's soaking wet, and he's got a white bathrobe on, and he's obviously naked under it. And so right away you think the guy got out of the shower. Mm-hmm. So, but I noticed he kept his right arm behind the open door, the wooden door, the inner door. And I'm talking to him, and anyway, I'm nice with him. I'm just telling him that, hey, these people complained and up the street, and I didn't tell him who it was, but I said they complained, and probably you need to quiet that thing down a little bit, because you know, you don't want them filing a complaint against you or anything. And all of a sudden, the door went the rest of the way open, and he raised his arm, and he had a 6-inch revolver that was loaded, and it had Western loads in it, because that's what the detectives told us later, which are good bullets. I mean, they don't misfire. Anyway, and his weapon was a good weapon, and it shouldn't have misfired. But anyway, he stuck that thing right through the screen door into my chest and pulled the trigger. And of course, I do like a backflip over the hedge and into the yard to get away. And of course, my partner's screwing around on the end of the porch, and all of a sudden he realized something was going on. So he, kind of got in cover too. And so we called it in, and this guy had barricaded himself in the house, and they tried calling him, they tried doing everything, and basically we didn't have SWAT teams back then. It was our unit was called SSU, which they had to stop for obvious reasons, the name of it. So anyway, these guys show up, and they try to get him out, and they got a negotiator and all that crap, and they're ushering us away and telling us that we've got to head to our district station and start on the paperwork. And we said, well, we want to stay here and see what happens. And they said to me, they said, why didn't you fire at him after he stuck the weapon through? I said, I was trying to get out of the way. I mean, back in those days, we didn't wear bulletproof vests. They weren't around. So anyway, they fire. This guy won't respond, and they're in the back and they're in the front, and they through one of the side windows. They shot a tear gas bullet in there, and this thing set the house on fire. And I mean, the curtains were flaming up, and
Jesus
anyway,
Christ.
I'm sitting there. I'm thinking, boy, this is getting worse and worse, and I'm not even thinking about the fact that he pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
I didn't know all the details till after we got to hit the station. But anyway, they finally got this guy out of there, and he came running out with his bathrobe on, and his little winky dangling in the wind, and he so they took him away. And they charged him with all kinds of stuff. But anyway, they came to me and they said at the station when we were filming, we had mounds of paperwork, and the news media, it showed up, and I mean, it was a mess. And and I really, they told me that the guy had pulled the trigger, and that there was 6 live rounds in the gun, and that one of them had been dimpled on the firing, the primer, and that it didn't fire, and they were hollow point 357 Magnums, and it was a Western load, which is a fine ammunition. So anyway, it was my partner just fell apart. I mean, he said, I'm over there screwing around, and you almost died, and well, he went to therapy and stuff over that, and he was a tough guy too. But at any rate, right after that, I got transferred to another unit, so obviously somebody was watching out for me.
Mm-hmm.
But,
I'd say so.
yeah. Yep. That was I think that's about as close as I ever came in something like that, other than the ex-wife deal.
Yeah, so now that you mentioned it, I remember a story about your first wife, I believe it was.
Yeah, first wife.
She had a negligent discharge.
Yes, that was. We'd been married a couple of years, and I mean, I was still on probation as a police officer.
Just to be clear, this is his first wife, not my mom. If it was my mom, she probably wouldn't have missed.
She didn't miss either, but
Well, she didn't get you where it counted.
yeah. Well, anyway, back in those days, as we talked earlier, your duty weapon had to be a revolver. Your off-duty weapon, I had a Super 38 Colt, which it looks like a 45, but it's a Super 38.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, it was I just got it. And anyway, we were starting to break up, and the marriage was, at a rocky point. She was in the other bedroom, and I was laying in bed watching TV. And, it's early evening. And incidentally, she was a registered nurse. She worked in the emergency room at big hospital. And so everybody knew her. She comes in with this Super 38, and she'd never seen a semi-automatic weapon before. So, I mean, I never even took her out shooting with a revolver. But she's got this thing, and she says, "I'm going to kill myself. I don't know how to work this thing." And I said, "Well, how about doing it in the other room?" I said, "I'm trying to watch this TV show," because I figured, she's not going to figure out anything. About that time, I'm staring at TV, and bam, it goes off. And it was like a slow motion deal. I felt like something hit me, but then the bullet, like slow motion, went into the window sash and stuck.
Jesus.
Where the sash goes to the drywall, it hit the aluminum deal, and Jesus Christ.
Dude, this dog has the worst fucking fart.
This dog can fart. Anyway, God damn dog. Ooh. Anyway, then better check and see if she put a nugget out the tail end there. Anyway, she drops the gun on the floor. And she's white as a ghost. And, I'm looking at that bullet, and I'm thinking, boy, I'm glad I didn't bust a window out. It was wintertime. And so all of a sudden I feel something hot running down the side of my face. And I stick my hand up there, and bright red blood. And what happened was the thing ricocheted, it went across my scalp. And I had hair back then up there, a lot of hair up there. Anyway, it just kind of scooted along and cut me open and stuck in the window sash.
Jesus.
I guess it's a Dutch head, I mean, it's a hard head. Anyway, she takes me to the emergency room where she works. Drive all the way into town. We lived out in the suburbs. Anyway, she takes me in there, and she tells this doctor that, he said, "How'd you do that?" And I said, "Oh, left the cabinet door open, and I raised up on the corner, and the mica cut my head." And she knows that if it comes out that was a gunshot deal, even if I had nothing to do with it or anything else, you're on probation, you're gone, you're fired.
Yeah.
Never to come back. So this doctor, she pleaded with him. I don't know what she told him, but the son of a bitch stitched me up like 8 stitches or 10 and never even numbed it up. This is one of my employees in the emergency room, and you're obviously an asshole because all cops are assholes.
Yeah.
So anyway, he stitched me up with no Novocaine, but that was an interesting deal.
So how about that for the luckiest man alive?
I know. Twice.
Yeah. But
2 times, and not just like getting shot, but those are both fatal shots.
Yeah.
That's it. Lights out.
Yeah.
You ain't coming back from either one of those.
And a scalp wound, I mean, even if it's basically something they can stitch up, that blood up there is bright red, and I mean it you barely cut your scalp open, and I mean it bleeds like you can't believe. But that's not the funny stuff, though.
Well, there's one story I think we should talk about if you're comfortable with it.
Which one?
The van.
Oh, yeah. We'll talk about it.
If you like the podcast, you like what we're talking about, this is going to be something special, because this story is something that you see, on CNN, stuff like that.
Really, it's that good?
Oh, it's
Because I've never heard it.
It's not that good. It's that bad.
Oh, it's
I
that
mean,
bad.
it
It's
is
good.
it is a total
Yeah.
disaster.
It was.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. For more info, find us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you have a story you'd love to share, shoot us an email at AFLVpodcast@gmail.com. That's AF, Achieving Failure, LV, Las Vegas, podcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next time.